Hey folks, it's Keith and Carl again. I think we're going to take a little relapse from
The news
stories
of
of the day and take a topical discussion in that rights have been a central part of the conversation that goes on in the Democratic debates to this point. And particularly they're talking about the healthcare being a right.
A human right.
A human
Not
right.
just a constitutional right.
Correct.
Human right.
And so we get into this conversation of, well, what are human rights? What are basic human rights? Where do those come from? Well, Carl and I think we agree primarily on this, that those rights are really defined. You have to go all the way back to the Bible to find what they are. Certainly our founding fathers listed those that they felt to be fundamental human rights that are granted by God. So they're not granted by the government. They can't be stopped by the government. Therefore, they aren't issued. They aren't sanctioned by. That the job of the government is simply to protect the already God-granted rights. And that's what the Constitution was supposed to do. That's what government was in the place of doing, was protecting those basic human rights. Well, you and I agree that healthcare isn't anywhere on that list.
I don't think it's a human right.
We don't think it's a human right. But there are things that are human rights, and one of them we thought we'd talk about or explore a little bit today is the right to self-defense or the right to bear arms.
Absolutely.
So take it from there. Where do you want to start on this broad topic, Carl?
So first, let's say the right to bear arms. We get that. We see it protected in the Constitution. Does this go back to a right from God, though? Because as you said, the Constitution is meant to protect God-given rights.
Correct.
So does God, according to the Bible, do we have a right to self-defense?
Oh, absolutely. And again, you can go back through the Old Testament and see stories about particularly Israel. I think the story of Esther is a prime example where it's certainly God's will to have that granted right of self-defense, but also buried inside the Ten Commandments themselves is an idea or a concept of personal property rights. And so all those come into play in the law. It talks about the killing of a burglar who breaks in the middle of the night, and the Bible says, yeah, that's not considered murder. There's no penalty for a person who kills somebody who comes into their house in order to steal something. So you would say, yeah, the God of the Old Testament, Jehovah, is certainly sanctioning self-defense and private property rights as being something that he sees as correct.
I think we should just make sure it's not like a blanket license to kill anyone who breaks into your house. It was like, if it comes down to that, and he ends up dying, you're not going to be charged with murder.
That is correct.
Okay. So let's continue the discussion here with we have the right to bear arms. Let's talk about a specific type of, these people refer to it as this type of weaponry, assault weapons. It's a really vague definition, but it's really controversial today because they're really dangerous. Assault military-style rifles.
That's what it sounds like. Again, at least that's the name they've given it. It's a completely arbitrary name.
It's arbitrary, and it's given that name by people who don't have them, who don't know a thing about firearms.
Sure, and yet in a number of instances, I think what they're really arguing about is the high capacity magazines these weapons are known to have, and therein lies a question: is the number of shots that a particular weapon has or can hold, is that something that should be regulated by the government? And my position would be no. Again, the God-given right of self-defense is as much for one bullet as it is for 100 bullets. So I don't really see that. Of course, I land on that side. I'm fine with automatic weapons and even bazookas in the hands of that really gets down to the question, what weaponry is acceptable, what weaponry can be regulated. There are some that, again, states and countries regulate this type of thing. Where do you stand on that? Is there a crossing? Is there a dividing line in which you say, yes, everyone should be able to have these kinds of weapons, and then these kinds they can't?
I'm more on the libertarian side. I think you should be able to have what you want, and I think the concept of
so you're okay with anything, bazookas,
right? But let me qualify my statement here. I think that the reason I'm okay with that is because logic tells us that we don't really have to worry about that, because your average idiot next door, he doesn't have the resources to buy or build a bazooka. If there's anyone who's actually crazy enough who wants to go blow something up, they find a way to do it. You know, there's homemade IEDs you can make. I just don't see how
You're
a law like
gonna,
that
you're
is,
gonna get
is
us
actually
in trouble even by saying by mentioning them. But I agree with you. You're 100% correct that there's blueprints out there for figuring out how to make bombs.
like, let's take the idea of 3D printed firearms.
Yeah.
It's such a scary thought. Anyone can, in their basement, 3D print a gun.
Yep.
Okay. Can you name me one person in the United States who has the intelligence and resources to own and operate a 3D printer who isn't already capable of just buying a regular gun? Like, can you find me one guy who's like, oh, I can't buy a gun, I can 3D print one?
You're correct on that. I think the concern isn't really so much that monetary hurdle that you're describing there. I think that on 3D printed guns, the concern is that somebody can set it up in the basement and suddenly you have they're a gun manufacturer and they can make as many weapons as they're wanting to. That becomes more of their concern at that moment. So and gun manufacturers are highly regulated right now, and so even in the 3D gun printing, I'm not sure if you follow all the legislation on this, but they've clamped down on them being able to sell any of their weapons. There are very easy ways to get around this as well. Gifting of weapons, losing weapons.
To me, if you want to make what if someone wanted to make an antique replica of a firearm and sell that?
I'm with you. I say that the law says that we should be able to do that. If I want to buy a 3D printer and make one, so be it. I think the point is, I can take a few Ben Franklins and head down to the local gun store and buy one that lasts a whole lot longer than a plastic.
I just don't see how that law's actually going to prevent anyone who is out to kill someone from killing someone. And if you want to sell guns in your basement, the only thing I have is I would make it illegal to sell guns to someone is a dangerous criminal. But beyond that,
I hope you're not a dangerous criminal.
I'm not a dangerous criminal. Maybe after people watch this video, I'll be listed as one.
Probably the case. Maybe on a watch list from now on.
We're going to watch lists. Okay. So going from assault weapons, now where can you carry these weapons?
Yeah, that's a good
The
question.
concept of gun-free zones.
Yeah, I feel like the original intent of the Constitution is that you could carry wherever you wanted to. I don't see good reason for there to be anywhere that's technically off limits to carrying guns because I find that it makes everywhere the weapons show up to be more safe. Now, the idea during the 70s was that you create a gun-free zone and make it illegal for weapons to be somewhere like schools, like government buildings, because the concern was, somebody would show up and shoot people, and guess what happened? People started showing up at those locations because they knew that in a gun-free zone, that was where you had a target-rich environment. So I think the stats say that 98% of all mass shootings have always occurred in gun-free zones. The solution is pretty simple in my mind, saying let's eliminate gun-free zones because that's where the lunatics are magnetized to. They show up at those places. That's where they do inflict most of the damage. Where do you stand on that?
I find it's a really complicated issue.
Sure.
Generally speaking, I align with that, but I think there's a lot of little caveats to that we need to get into. Like, so a school, like an elementary school, I think the concern is not the keeping the guns out, is they're worried more about accidents. If there's a misfire or you don't want a little kid getting hurt in an accident. So I think there's an idea there. Well, we should ask people to leave their firearms outside to protect the kids in that way.
But is that really the solution?
Well, you could say no. Now, what do you know the concept of how should we keep schools safe?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm driving there really quickly. So
What about bars?
what about bars?
Yeah. Should you be able to carry? Should you not be able to carry into a bar? Should you be able to carry as long as you don't drink? Or
No, I would say you get to carry wherever you want to. If somebody gets drunk and starts shooting the place up, they're going to do that anyway. Just make the laws such that the penalty for this kind of thing are stiff enough that people will think twice about it. Therein is our problem: is that we don't have a really good legal system with the proper set of disincentivation to incentivization, to keep people from doing lunatic things like this.
Okay. So you think it should be legal to carry a gun into a bar?
Yeah, into a bar, into a school. I'm saying it's going to make both those locations much safer if people question.
You think a bar with drunk guys with guns is going to be safer than a bar full of drunk
I
guys
do.
without guns?
Yeah, completely. Completely.
Okay.
I'm telling you that if your assumption is that you show up at a bar and the guy across from you, you think he doesn't have a weapon, it turns into am I big enough and tough enough to take this guy, as opposed to maybe I should treat everybody in here like they've got a gun on their hip because they might. I find that to be a much safer location.
Okay. Now, my solution to that is I just don't go into bars in the first place. So
sure.
I don't deal with that problem. I mean, part of me wants to say I'll just leave it up to the bar owner whether he wants to allow guns in there or not. It's his place.
Well, and how about on the school grounds?
On the school grounds?
You had mentioned earlier, should teachers, is that a solution if teachers have weapons?
Should teachers have weapons? I think there needs to be armed security in schools, and that schools need much better safety plans.
Who's going to pay for that?
Who's going to pay for it?
Yeah.
Like putting police officers in schools.
Yeah,
I suppose
that's-
taxpayers would have to pay for that.
All right.
Because,
So you don't mind dipping into my pocket again?
well, it's going to keep our kids safe from shooters.
Right, but if there's another lower cost method that's even better at doing it, would you ever consider that?
I would consider it, but I don't just want to say anybody with a gun can show up on the school and guard the campus.
So you believe,
I don't trust
fundamentally, you believe that some people, that government people should have guns, and citizenry, they're the icky peons that don't need to have weapons. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding your argument here.
I think that parents would like to know that the people who are guarding their children are people who at least have some common sense. Like, I know a lot of people in this world who I don't want to have guns. Like, they have a right to, but I do not want to see them with
All
guns.
right, so you trust, in your heart of hearts, you trust government officials to decide who has sense and who doesn't.
It's on a real local level. It's a lot more closer to people. It could be done.
Right.
Issues and
Could
things.
be. And if we just went by the Constitution and said, if a teacher wants to carry a weapon, they get to carry a weapon because that's what our Constitution says.
Okay, so I think the teacher should be allowed to carry the weapon,
Mhm.
but I don't want to blanketly arm all of them. Like, I
No,
would
no,
think,
no.
okay, if the teacher wants to carry,
Well, the Constitution doesn't do that.
no, okay, but so like on a local level, if I was on the school board, I would, and I'm thinking maybe you say, okay, the teacher can carry, but he needs to inform the school that he's going to, and he should probably be licensed and
should-
permitted to do it. Maybe
Why?
it's maybe they should offer all the teachers some training on how to handle that situation. Because it can be a complicated situation.
It can be a very complicated situation, and in every one of the school shootings, the sad thing is that if teachers had weapons, if the ones who actually even had a propensity to do so, we could have avoided a lot of problems. All right, so we fundamentally agree on constitutional right to bear arms. That is, in fact, a right. And the only question that we have is what kind of stipulations might occur at some reasonable stipulations that might occur at a school, at a government building, in another setting. Any others that you feel are big targets where a regulation is definitely required?
Sure, there are some.
Well, I mean, the whole idea, again, children, for that matter, you brought that up. We don't, I'm not advocating to get guns in the hands of kids, but, is the Constitution, is is it carving that out itself, or is that being carved out by individual states or federal laws?
What do you mean?
The Constitution says that these are rights that are granted by God, the right to self-defense. Are we going to make the argument then that self-defense is something that cannot be provided to children as well? That they don't get the right to do that?
That's a tough question.
Sure, Mr. Libertarian.
I don't think on some level that should be up to the parents.
Well, sure, but in any case, is it ever up to the government to decide? Clearly, we've left it that way. I mean, that's the way it is in reality.
Well, I think for a child that's too young to even understand things like that, like I wouldn't want a 4-year-old walking around with a pistol.
No, I think
I mean, they have right to self-defense, but they're not old enough to even realize, that whole concept or understand how they would.
Right.
They're much more likely to hurt themselves or a family member.
But I guess I'm just trying to raise the obvious issue. When we get them to say something is a fundamental right, are we convicted that that's the case, or are we conveniently going to carve out all kinds of things that, just based on however we feel on a particular day?
This is something you're never going to get completely right.
Right.
And so I would say you have to have at least a very basic enrollment, like I said, I don't want a 4-year-old with a gun saying, well, he has the right to self-defense.
Yeah, I don't want to go to a Chuck E. Cheese and find out that every kid there has a weapon. I think that would be one of the most dangerous places on earth.
Right. At some point, I think you'd have to set an age line saying, yes, this child is aware of this.
Yeah, and
right,
I think the way we try to do that is that
8, 10, 12, wherever you want to set that line.
Sure, but even beyond that is I think you made a point. The parent should have a major say in that. Once a kid leaves the house, obviously he gets to make whatever choices he wants, he or she. Prior to that, it's the rules the parents would set. And I think that's kind of what's occurring in the schools, saying, well, there may be some that are capable, but there are some who would not, and therefore, we're just going to say across the board, no one. Which is part of the reason that I would advocate for saying, well, then we definitely need to have teachers there as a line of defense against any unspeakable crimes that lunatics would want to inflict on a school district.
What do you think about security teams? Do you think police officers should be more well armed? Because if the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is with the good guy with a gun, should we give the good guys better guns?
Well, I'm for particularly the police, the sheriff's departments having great weapons. I'm for them having certainly as good as anything. This is one of the things that we have with the unfair firefights, even down on our border, and the drug trafficking that goes on, is that the cartels that are coming across our border have better weaponry than our side even has, police force-wise. And so you say, well, we need to upgrade our police forces.
Now we're talking like border control.
Well, we are, but
city police.
Sure, but where that comes into play is to say, okay, I'm going to give all of our policemen automatic weapons, and so everyone there is going to have Uzis and pick your favorite automatic weapon. Anyway, if you do that, now you're saying, okay, now all the government police force has better weaponry than the citizens do, and now you've put that out of kilter. Which is why you have to get back into, I think, where you were driving at is, should there be stipulations on what people can have? And today, they are regulated, particularly automatic weapons, and I would land on the side of saying they really shouldn't be regulated.
I agree with that. I'm as I said, I keep saying I'm libertarian, and you kind of point out flaws that kind of make me seem not, so we'll see how that goes. When I was in Guatemala City, everywhere we drove around, there was police officers, two of them standing together, and they both had shotguns in their hands. Would you like to see our local police forces, should they have better guns? Should they just be walking around with big guns on their shoulders? And,
Well, they've, the ones that I've seen today carry around 45s as their sidearm. At least in their cars, I've seen shotguns. I'm not sure, what are you driving at saying you want to get them?
the concept of the only thing that stops a bad guy with the gun is a good guy with the gun.
Yes.
So should we give the good guys more guns, better guns? Where does that end?
I don't think that it does. I mean, I think the good guys ought to have access to every weapon that's available out there. But there shouldn't be a limit on, how much self-defense is enough self-defense. That's up to the citizen to make that call.
Okay. There was a story I saw. Oh gosh, it must have been a few years ago. It was about two gentlemen that were walking down the street with AR-15s, I believe. They weren't hurting anybody. They were just doing it because there was a legal right.
Right.
What do you think about that? It's legal.
Mhm.
They have the right to self-defense. Do you think it's okay to just be braggadociously walking down the street with a
Oh yeah,
firearm?
Yeah, definitely. It's called open carry. It's completely legal. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not concerned.
Okay, so you want to drive down the street and walk into your favorite burger joint, and you just see a couple of guys walking down the street with rifles. That wouldn't bother you at all.
No, and
You just are strangers. You don't know who they are.
well, again, if they look like they're from Yadkin County, I would feel pretty good about it. If it looks like they came from Pakistan, or I might have an uneasy feeling about it.
Okay. That's one I might just have a little kind of disagreement with. I would be slightly, because I don't know if they're good guys or bad guys. There's some psychos in Yadkin County.
Sure, and if I was
Most people are good people, but there's some weird ones.
sure, but again, are you a Constitution guy though? I mean, at the end of the day, we're saying this law should not be abridged. This right cannot be amended or regulated by government. It's government's job, if anything, to protect that right.
So am I in favor of open carry in
Yeah.
general? Yes, as I said with the school shootings, I think there's some additional little rules you want to add on to that. Like if you're going to carry a weapon, you should be doing it in the most non-threatening way possible.
You're not affected or bothered if somebody chews a piece of toast in the shape of a gun or anything like that,
No.
right?
That's not
Okay.
threatening. It's a piece of bread. I'm saying if someone wants to walk down the
It's just-
street
it's just
open carrying a shotgun,
Right.
okay, I want to do it in a way that clearly indicates that they're not getting ready to come kill me.
Okay.
I don't know what the best way to do this. I don't typically do that, so
Well, I would recommend maybe you carry yourself. Just gotta throw that out there.
someone suggested that I take a rifle in the back of my motorcycle because I'm not old enough to own a pistol. Many of it on, not that would get the cops called on me for no reason.
Yeah, that would look very strange. But
So if you saw me riding down the street on my bike with an assault rifle strapped to my back, would that?
it wouldn't bother me at all.
I'd bother
I'd say
you
go,
someday.
go, Carl.
If you start paying me some more, I'll go get one.
That's right. I'll have a lot more respect for you there. So
Okay. Oh, I think does that conclude our
I think that
podcast
wraps
today?
us up. We covered as much as we can.
Thanks for watching, folks.
Thanks.